Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're going to put on our systems engineer hats and look at a pretty fascinating topic: how complex democratic institutions actually behave under extreme pressure. We're stripping away the usual politics here. Instead, we're looking at the pure clinical mechanics of the machine. It's honestly a brilliant way to understand exactly how structures hold together or, fall apart when they're really put to the test. So, the core mechanism we're exploring today basically boils down to one universal principle. It's this structural mismatch between high-velocity actors and slow, procedural defense systems. And look, whether you're talking about a car engine, a massive computer network, or a government, this right here is the ultimate stress test for absolutely any organized structure. Okay, let's dive into this blueprint. Today we're going to cover 1. The guardrail stress test. 2. The asymmetry of speed. 3. The psychology of norm erosion. 4. When coordinated resistance fails. And finally, 5. Strategies for system defense. Section 1. The guardrails stress test. I want you to try and think of a political system not as a collection of beliefs or ideologies, but literally as an engineering framework facing a high-velocity input. We can break the actors down into mechanical parts, right? Executive leadership, that acts as the high-velocity input in the system. Then you have Congress and the courts, which basically function as your procedural actors. The bureaucracy provides the necessary inertia and delay. And party elites? Well, they act as the system's gatekeepers, constantly having to weigh these complex electoral trade-offs. And objectively speaking, their effectiveness entirely depends on prior structural strength, and crucially, their willingness to actually enforce the rules. Section 2. The asymmetry of speed. All right, this is where we look at the actual engine driving this stress test. On one side, you've got executive action, which is incredibly fast-moving, is heavily incentivized to push legal and normative boundaries, and it immediately centralizes attention. But on the other side, the institutional response is slow, it's procedurally delayed, it's highly fragmented across different branches, and it relies entirely on complex coordination just to function at all. And this brilliantly illustrates the resulting dynamic, a first-mover advantage in norm violation. Basically, the actor who moves fastest dictates the terms of engagement, and that just leaves the slower procedural systems scrambling to catch up. It's kind of like a physics problem, but applied directly to governance. Section 3. Psychology of norm erosion. Now let's peel back the institutional mechanics for a second and look at the human element operating within this machine. This brings us to a really crucial concept called familiarity desensitization. This is the process by which repeated norm violations become normalized and accepted through sheer exposure over time. It's a huge aha moment when you're analyzing systems because you realize that repeated shocks actually dull the system's defensive reflexes rather than heighten them. So let's walk through exactly how this loop happens in real time. Step 1, a norm violation actually occurs. Step 2, the institution issues a weak or delayed punishment. Remember that procedural lag we just talked about? Yeah, that kicks in here. Step 3, the behavior undergoes normalization. People get used to it. And step 4, we see an increased frequency and intensity of violations. Because there's no immediate structural friction, the behavior is pretty much guaranteed to escalate in this loop. But that's not the only loop running in the background. Identity polarization is heavily fueled by media amplification. This means where supporters see a demonstration of strength, opponents see an existential threat. Now add in that institutional delay bias, and suddenly the perceived boundaries of the entire system shift. Neutrally speaking, what were once considered firm, unbreakable rules easily downgrade into optional guidelines. And that makes cross-party restraint structurally impossible. Section 4. When coordinated resistance fails. This brings us to the real climax of our analysis. We need to pinpoint the exact failure conditions of the institutional machine. So, we have to ask the critical question: when do guardrails actually collapse? Well, here is the ultimate structural rule that answers that. Guardrails fail when no institution is willing or able to absorb the cost of confronting a norm-breaking executive collectively. The absolute key word there is collectively. Independent institutions just fail when they act alone rather than as one synchronized unit. Now, to be absolutely impartial and ruthlessly analytical here, we also have to acknowledge the system's inherent constraints. Outcomes heavily depend on institutional density and elite cohesion. Even the most aggressive actors are going to face intense friction from bureaucratic inertia and distributed veto points. And it's really crucial to remember that a norm-breaking style doesn't always equal systemic transformation. The machine actually has its own gravity that pushes back. Section 5. Strategies for System Defense. So how do we take these mechanical truths and apply them to actually defend complex systems? Because it turns out this isn't just about politics. Think about it. In trading systems, high-frequency traders exploit slow regulatory responses. In chess, aggressive tempo play crushes a fragmented defense. In cybersecurity, fast attackers completely exploit slow patching systems. And in the military, rapid offensives easily outpace slow coalition coordination. Asymmetric speed exploitation is literally a universal law of systems dynamics. So the crucial point is the blueprint for defense is actually pretty clear. If speed and fragmentation are your vulnerabilities, then synchronization is your ultimate antidote. You must increase coordination speed between institutions. You have to enforce early penalties, prevent that normalization through rapid signaling, and maintain absolute agreement on redline behaviors before the stress test even begins. Let's crystallize everything into one core takeaway. Guardrails fail not because they don't exist, but because they cannot coordinate fast enough to match the speed of exploitation. Synchronization speed is the true, unfiltered measure of organizational resilience. Which leaves us with this final thought to analyze in our own worlds. From democratic governance to AI alignment, are our current systems synchronized fast enough to survive a high-velocity breach? Keep questioning the complex systems around you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.